composition here. This is the matchup for sure that wait a second, the Pumpers are also playing a new matchup here. So Wildcard Gaming was expecting a Warrior, so this composition that they brought out is supposed to counter that Warrior of Nerd Rage. Now Nerd Rage gonna be throwing themselves a curveball here, playing that Windwalker. This is very interesting. I actually think the Pumpers wins this blind pick.
Yeah, definitely. Nerd Rage could be potentially going down here very early on, as he was caught into a leg sweep. A lot of bursts thrown out by Wildcard Gaming. And what's interesting about the composition the Pumpers is running right now is this is what Wildcard Gaming was running last week, had so much success and actually completely dominated Method Black with. So this is one of the things about Wildcard Gaming. They have the flexibility of playing these cleave setups, but also bring in the Mage of Morrow when they really need to. We'll just have to see if that's enough for taking down the Pumpers here.
Yep, since the focused growth changes to Restoration Druid, Mistweaver has been on the rise. Effectively, when we see a Mistweaver going against a Restoration Druid, the Mistweaver Monk is unlikely needed to drink to maintain his mana at a heavy advantage over the Druid, which is why we see them more prominently. We saw Gorecki in the North American region playing this composition, Windwalker and Unholy Death Knight with the Druids, but now we see Mistweaver played in it a lot more often because of that mana advantage.
Yeah, Morrow in midfield trying to create some pressure for his team. Cervantes getting caught into the polymorphs, but looks like they're not going to be able to get too much done as Nerd Rage and Trainer are both playing very defensive with this positioning. They realize, look, Nerd Rage, no Transcendence, no Touch of Karma, no Diffuse Magic, basically nothing. As Drainer moves to the midfield, gets a double leg sweep. Nice setup here by the Pumpers. Morrow could potentially be forced into his first Ice Block, but like we kind of talk about, for these cleave setups, like what the Pumpers are running, to take down a Frost Mage, you have to work through a few defensive cooldowns that have a very short cooldown. The Temporal Shield for the Mage, as well as the Iron Bark for the Restoration Druid. You need enough uptime to get through both of those, and that is your window of opportunity to really push forward and try to get the big cooldown, which is Ice Block. So unfortunately for the Pumpers, doesn't look like they're going to be able to have enough time as they still are in midfield. That was actually a really nice setup once again. Cervantes always setting up the Windwalker Monk as well as the Mistweaver Monk by using that Death Grip, taking Looney out of position, then they can get the double stun. So that's a classic combo you see between Monk and Death Knight, and one of the reasons why together they're so strong.
We've seen Nerd Rage compete with Cervantes in the past, but more frequently on an Arms Warrior. This is the first time we've seen him debut the Windwalker Monk, but you can tell that even though maybe he's inexperienced on that specialization, the synergy between them is definitely carrying their team. A lot of these triple stun, lockdown, crowd control attempts are going to net them huge pressure, potentially kills later on in the fight. We see a double stun initiated, Looney responds, and basically the trade we will see from the side of Wildcard Gaming for these leg sweeps is a Temporal Shield or an Iron Bark. So in that position, Temporal Shield wasn't available, but Iron Bark was, so it's pretty straightforward for Looney to make that exchange. Now the next time this incoming stun lock happens, it's Morrow that will have to make the trade. He'll have to predict the incoming stun because he doesn't have his Glaire's Medallion to remove it to then gain access to Temporal Shield. Pressure will be on Morrow to avoid this next stun lock.
Yeah, definitely. Blizzo moves in on top of Drainer and Nerd Rage. You can see all three monks positioned behind the pillar. Blizzo doesn't want to deal with that Fist of Fury, so he rolls away, turn his attention over onto Cervantes. But so far, like we talked about, Cervantes on that Death Knight, he's going to be feeling relatively healthy. Once again, Blizzo is opting to run that grapple weapon, and that is an effective counter against an Unholy Death Knight. As if you grapple weapon, you do disarm the Death Knight, and then unfortunately he doesn't have access to that Death Strike. So if they can burst Cervantes down, grapple weapon, you won't be able to get out any sort of self-healing, and that's a window of opportunity for Wildcard Gaming to actually try to take him down.
We were saying just as the game started, we thought that the Pumpers were compositionally advantaged. I would have to agree with it on paper, but the pressure I think has been somewhat in favor of Wildcard Gaming. We've seen frequent Touch of Karma forces from Nerd Rage as an exposed target before dampening, which is great for the Wildcard Gaming. Their main strategy is to kill the Windwalker Monk before dampening, and then much the same has changed my mind is to then switch to the Death Knight in deep dampening. So if Wildcard Gaming can maintain mana, which they're also doing a great job, deeper into dampening, paired up with that grapple weapon strategy, which we saw first initialized just a couple of weeks ago to try and remove that Death Strike healing from the Death Knight. So if you use grapple weapon or a disarm or a dismantle, use one of these spells against the Death Knight, you take away their weapon. They can't use Death Strike, which is effectively they heal themselves when they use it. They can't use it for an extended period of time, and then you try and burst them down and kill them in that window of opportunity. Still dampening likely to be required to pull it off, but it's something that Blizzo's got in his back pocket, and so long as Looney can maintain his mana until that stage, I do think they will be able to kill Cervantes with that condition.
I think it is likely, especially later on in the game. Trainer moving in, getting in the double leg sweep. Blizzo trinkets out, Morrow opting to sit it. as Iron Bark protects him from a lot of that incoming damage. But now Blizzo could actually be a vulnerable target if the Pumpers can find a nice leg sweep onto Blizzo, get the burst setup they need. But Wildcard Gaming looking to get some pressure rolling, interrupt onto Drainer. Cervantes getting low, Nerd Rage forced to use the Touch of Karma. This is beautiful pressure from Wildcard Gaming. Touch of Death gets used, but Nerd Rage is able to deflect it with the Touch of Karma, as well as the Fortifying Brew, as the Pumpers are looking to reverse the pressure on Morrow.
This is what I was saying. The pressure from Wildcard Gaming, they've been getting big cooldown forces from Nerd Rage throughout and have decent damage on Cervantes. So even though they may be compositionally disadvantaged, they're setting themselves up well for victory. They're maintaining mana and taking opportunities of these windows, keeping Drainer on the back foot. And one thing is that Drainer has gone the safe route with his Mistweaver. He's not running the way of the Crane, which we've seen a lot of Mistweavers, so they can increase their damage and move forward and attack and add pressure to the team for a kill. It would be very effective during dampening Maledict's pushes on Morrow for Ice Block. So Drainer has opted to go for a safer pick, which is all in well, but he's not winning on mana. So going the safe route and then not winning on mana is definitely not playing in the condition. But with the double stun, that nets them an Ice Block against Morrow just as we've stepped foot into dampening. Counterspell secured with a double stun. This is a good opportunity for Wildcard Gaming to swing back, but Blizzo overextended his defensive lineup earlier on using Touch of Karma on Nerd Rage's Touch of Karma to try and redirect the damage back at him for a kill and not finding it. Scary moment for Blizzo, but Looney doesn't even flinch. He just easily recovers.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why Windwalker monks right now are so powerful into these cleave setups is one of the new honor talents called Turbo Fist. And basically what it does is it empowers your Fists of Fury to give you 100% parry. So while you're channeling Fists of Fury, like Blizzo is now, you have 100% parry. As in addition, you're going to be snaring up everyone hit by that Fist of Fury by 90%. So super effective into Cervantes and Nerd Rage. And really, the only opportunity the Pumpers have to take them down is if they catch them in a stun. And if they're able to do that, might be able to fall, but as long as Blizzo responds appropriately, doesn't waste his trinket, doesn't waste his Touch of Karma, I really feel like it's unlikely he'll go down in this matchup.
Both these teams looking evenly matched in game number 1, and the entire series could come down to victory here on the Grand Arena to gain a compositional advantage for the swing match and the rest of the series. Everything is on the line here in game number 1. We're now at 15% dampening, moving towards that 40% magic mark to take down an Unholy Death Knight. There have already been close calls for Nerd Rage and Cervantes, which is something that I wasn't expecting. Wildcard Gaming have definitely prepared this composition here for the blind pick, and they're looking very solid so far, still maintaining a mana advantage against a Mistweaver, which is also an unlikely advantage. Good crowd control initiation by Blizzo, locking Drainer and Cervantes out of the fight. That grapple weapon making it a scary moment, but now that that is faded, Cervantes wants to attack. He may be overextending, has to anti-magic zone. Looney secures a Cyclone. And this is what I love about Looney, is that he can play that defensive trading game all the way deep into dampening, make 0 mistakes, and then still clutch out exactly when he needs to these Cyclones to get a kill. Never overextends it. He's definitely not known as like an aggressive druid, but he definitely has the skill set to do it, and he picks his moments well.
Yeah, definitely. Morrow now with Temporal Shield looking to get away. Tiger's Lust backs him up, and Blizzo has been doing a great job with his Ring of Peace and Tiger's Lust to give Morrow a little bit more breathing room in this matchup and making it difficult for Nerd Rage and Cervantes to really have the uptime that they need. So Wildcard Gaming, you can tell that they have practiced this composition quite a bit. They have really good synergy, really good chemistry. Now Nerd Rage and Cervantes getting bursted down, but Morrow with only 1 Ice Block, still a little bit vulnerable here. Cervantes, grapple weapon, no Death Strikes available. The anti-magic shell has to be traded out. Death Pact as well. But still, Cervantes very vulnerable. Drainer doesn't have the life cocoon for another couple seconds. Cervantes has to hold on, but Looney denies, actually gets the Cyclone. Cervantes has to trinket out, even increasing the vulnerability there of Cervantes. And I feel like that was potentially a little bit over-aggressive by Cervantes, but they really want the second Ice Block.
We see an overlap of Iron Bark and Temporal Shield. This is the kind of cooldown rotation that I was talking about earlier in the game. Having used both that defense at the same time means that the next unlock could be Morrow's Ice Block, and that's engaged. He tries to use Glaire's Medallion to hold out, but Glaire's Maledicts are now flying in, soaking up some incoming healing. Looney gets interrupted. Things could snowball out of control. Blizzo denies it for now, but how much longer? If Nerd Rage is able to connect, he's unable to. Good Blizzard position, but Ring of Peace punts Morrow back into the fight. Touch of Death is about to go off. This could easily force the final Ice Block of the game. Cervantes has secured multiple interrupts, putting Looney behind. Huge hit. Morrow gets gripped back in. Blizzo saving him for now, but how much longer will it be? It's not going to be enough. Second Ice Block forced. Nerd Rage at the same time gets counter-aggressed by Blizzo. Blizzo definitely MVP in that moment, and that's what these matches end up being, is just a race to get a kill, maybe even a cross kill deeper into dampening. gaming. And in this case, Blizzo caught Nerd Rage off guard.
The first thing that we said going into this one as well was how important the blind pick really would be. I think it's important, though, to really talk about what the Pumpers did do here, though, because it was a heads-up play by them. They really did start to expect what Wildcard Gaming might do, and all of a sudden we see Nerd Rage not playing that Warrior. How did that look?
Honestly, it looked like he was a little bit shaky on that Windwalker Monk. Like, honestly, I don't think a Windwalker Monk should go down that easily into the matchup. He still has a lot of defensive cooldowns to work with, and here he's going to activate some of them offensively to try to get that ice block. And I think that it looked pretty good for the Pumpers here, but they stayed out a long time here. Then also Drainer, I would have loved to see him play that Way of the Crane. And I mean, Nerd Rage, he still had some things to work with here, but he just was caught off guard here. Blizzo doing so much damage. Blizzo's Monk has been looking phenomenal throughout the match. And the other thing is as well, Maro was running a very interesting build where he stacks Packed Ice and a Whiteout. We've seen this build before. Essentially, you talent out of all the Frostball talents and you pick things that increases your Ice Lance damage instead. And then he was comboing it with a Burst of Cold. And what Burst of Cold does is when you Frost Nova, your Cone of Cold does 400% more damage. It gives you a buff. So Maro chose to play the double Nova talent here instead of that Frigid Winds, which allows him to Cone of Cold, Nova, resets his Cone of Cold again for big chunks of damage, AoE damage as well, and then Frost Nova again, and then another Cone of Cold. So he had a lot of burst because of that, and then he was running that classic Freezing Rain as well as the Frozen Orb. So he drops an orb, he gets 2 free blizzards, and then he can also rotate that with the Nova, and you can actually make a nice little move with Cold Snap offensively as well, where you reset your Nova, so you can Cone of Cold, Nova, Cone of Cold, Nova, Cone of Cold, Cold Snap, Cone of Cold, Nova, Cone of Cold. So
what do they call that?
They call that the Michael Jackson, and that's because Cone of Cold slows people so hard that, you know, they kind of move backwards when they try to move forward. You know, I call it the Michael Jackson anyway.
I know.
But you can't do the Michael Jackson when you're not playing the Frigid Winds. Mario was not.
They call it Deletified.
It worked well, though.
Yeah, it definitely does. And one of the big things, though, that we have to ask now when we talk about that blind pick being so important, how do the Pumpers actually switch that up?
Well, it really depends. What is Wildcard Gaming going to lock in? Can they lock in the Windwalker, Frost Mage, Restoration Druid once again? We typically see the Pumpers, when going against these sort of wizard setups, although this isn't really a wizard setup, bring in Fnobbers on the Balance Druid. So they have the Balance Druid, Death Knight, Resto Druid, or Mistweaver, sorry, that they play with. And it seems to play out quite well in favor of the Pumpers, but I don't know if this is one of the compositions that they're really favored in. I feel like overall, Windwalker, Frostmage, Resto Druid is relatively powerful, so we'll have to see what Wildcard Gaming decides to lock in blind. We do know for sure that they also have that Windwalker, Death Knight, Mistweaver setup if they really need to, but I think Maro on the Frostmage is probably what we see, and I think Wildcard Gaming is basically going to be locking in the same thing and basically saying, Pumpers, what do you got for us?
I think this is one of the other tests, too, for Wildcard Gaming. I mean, there's no question that they are very much top 2 team in EU, right? Like, that's never been a question really throughout this entire year, really throughout the past 2 years, even though we do see Maro obviously coming onto Wildcard Gaming now. But yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say this. What's really interesting about this matchup as well is Wildcard Gaming has basically given Method Black an answer to the one composition that they couldn't beat last week. So they can actually see exactly what happened. And now that kind of makes the matchup potentially later on between Wildcard Gaming and Method Black a lot more interesting, because Method Black can see, here's a comp that can beat that. And now that kind of mixes things up.
In my mind.
Wazwalker might be coming in.
Yep.
Yeah, that was actually exactly what I was going to talk about, right? Like, when we look at this as a test, and all of a sudden Wildcard Gaming, they're kind of in this spot where they're getting tested right now by the Pumpers, right? Obviously, that's going to be a test. I think the Pumpers are kind of this team that's been proving that they are on the top caliber. The meta had to swing in their direction. It took them a little while for this team even to come together. Obviously, we know Fnobbers was on a different team. The one time we see them on broadcast, they take the entire thing. We know the blind picks were a problem the week that they didn't get here. This sets up so much to see just how dominant Wildcard Gaming can be, and also it starts to bring up the questions, will Method Black be able to find answers?
I have a better thing I need to add in here.
You got the best thing.
I got the best thing. So if Wildcard Gaming beats the Pumpers here, they drop down to the lower bracket where we will face Plot Twist. Now, Plot Twist, they also have a Windwalker, but this guy happens to be a main. We've been talking a lot about him, Rezus, as well as Yes Dave, who is also a fantastic mage. So they could run a similar composition with that Windwalker mage as well. And actually speaking with Rezus yesterday, he told me that they would rather face Change My Mind, which is the matchup that we will see a little bit later because they lost, and of course the Pumpers. They want to avoid Method Black and Wildcard Gaming at all costs. So this series right here has a lot of ramifications on the entire bracket and how the entire tournament could shape up, and even which teams are going to be going to that land later on. All of a sudden, this gives them a better chance to make a deep run, but also this has shown Method Black now how to beat this composition. Now the Pumpers, I like what Wildcard Gaming are doing here. Pumpers locks in a small map because they don't want to be playing against that Wizard cleave as the melee cleave. Now, Wildcard Gaming, they kind of call the bluff. They go lock in the same thing, and then the Pumpers, they lock in their Moonkin now. Their Moonkin is going to be less effective as well on this small map, so had they picked a bigger map, it would have been kind of like shooting yourself in the foot, but also with the smaller map, you still can't go for that main composition cleave, and now Nerd Rage has to be subbed out, and Fnobers has to be brought in.
Yep, very, very smart there, but I think we have an even better thing, right, to build off of what you were saying. I think when it really does, though, and I think the reason that we're in this situation as well, I not even think, it's kind of a fact. We're in the 5th cup, right? So all of these storylines that are starting to come together now, it's because we can actually look at these brackets and say, oh wait, this is actually math that we can do. We can really start to figure out all of the different permutations, and we look at this lower side of the bracket, and as Zico started to talk about, Sid, you have teams like AWC and Plot Twist down there right now. These are the teams that are on the bubble. If they get knocked out in that first round that we see them on broadcast, all of a sudden you look at the other teams that are really making it to the top 4 and you're like, this might be land.
Yeah, I mean, ABC took out the Pumpers last week, so they looked solid. I believe it was a 3-0 in the offline bracket. Now they might have a rematch here if the Pumpers go down. It's really dependent on how this matchup plays out. This is one that we haven't seen yet in tournament play. The Frost Mage, the Windwalker, and the Restoration Druids. This is really the first time. It may be the case that the Pumpers composition doesn't beat Wildcard Gaming, and Wildcard Gaming could have mathed out a composition that beats just the Pumpers outright, every option they have. This could be a new adaptation. Maro's definitely running that Burst of Cold build like Zico pointed out, which is unique. We haven't seen teams like the Mew Mew Kitty Cats in North America. We haven't seen Jamili try that when they played the Windwalker Mage. It looked way more effective against the double melee than any other Mage combination with Windwalker that we've seen so far. Potentially Wildcard Gaming have an answer to the entire team of the Pumpers with this, and we'll find out shortly.
It's funny that you do bring up that team as well. I know that they're going to be playing a little bit later today against Method Orange. We have NA getting all set up. So there are some pretty interesting things going on in North America. It's obviously getting down to the wire there as well. But let's see if the Pumpers, this is the second time that we see them on broadcast. Last time they were able to win it when they were on broadcast. Will they be able to get something going in the top side of the bracket?
Yeah, but the meta has been changing even without many changes to the game, especially like a composition like this. We thought Windwalker Mage wasn't too potent and it wasn't that strong, but in that last match, obviously Nerd Rage looked a little shaky, but overall their pressure was solid. Blizzo's support was good. He's looking much better on the Windwalker overall. We've definitely commended Blizzo in the past for his Arms Warrior play, most certainly his defensive as well as ability to switch to offensive. Arguably one of the best warriors in the game, if not the best warrior. Now substituting onto Windwalker and still supporting the team just as effectively.
Yep, definitely. I was looking to see if Blizzo was going to be switching over to the Tiger Eye Brew, as that would be good pressure onto Fnobbers on the Balance Druid, kind of cuts through the bear form, but he's still opting to go with the grapple weapon, so that kind of says to me that Cervantes is likely going to be the kill target once again. They're sitting on Fnobbers, trying to deny him, as it's unlikely Cervantes will go down until a little bit later on in the game, but with the grapple weapon, that sort of opens up the opportunities for Wildcard Gaming in this matchup. We'll have to see how that exactly plays out. So far, Maro and Looney have been doing a great job getting a lot of control of Cervantes. And this is one of the problems. When you pressure down a Moonkin like this, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to get out too many Cyclones in this situation. You have the interrupt from Maro, interrupt from Blizzo, and if you're in balance form or the Moonkin form for too long, then you're very susceptible to some of the damage. And if you just sit on the Moonkin, he's kind of forced in this spot where he's in bear form. He has to try to tank through a lot of the damage, and there's really not too much counter pressure on the side of the Pumpers on the Wildcard Gaming.
I mean, the main strength of the Pumpers composition is Drink Denial with an Unholy Death Knight and the Diseases, the Tidal Surge Azerite trait, then a Balanced Druid bringing in Starfall for massive area of effect. Drink Denial, that's supposed to be the main win condition, and you can tell that the Pumpers are really going for it because Drainer is still not running Way of the Crane for that aggressive push on the Mistweaver. He wants a mana advantage. Well, Looney's been maintaining his mana throughout this series where he is not supposed to be able to maintain it, so unless the Pumpers can start developing that mana lead, it's not looking good on this composition that they've substituted in either. Blizzo connecting on to Fnobbers, multiple defensive cooldowns forced there. Although a Maledict misfire maybe there on a Fnobbers, not going to be accomplishing too much from Morrow. Definitely going to be allowing the Pumpers more opportunity to breathe. Touch of Death available, but Blizzo gets cycloned right as he wanted to go for a grapple weapon push. We see a swap to Looney. This is definitely a win condition as well for the Pumpers to try and kill the Restoration Druid in a swap. They can use the Death Grip, pull Looney into the open, stunlock him with the Asphyxiate, although it's less likely to see him go down without Incarnation available. That is rotating back and available in another 40 seconds. So if we see another switch to Looney, they could try and pull a Gladiator's Medallion from him. So far, that seems to be the only win condition for the Pumpers before dampening.
Yeah, Fnobbers has been pressured down. Blizzo's been doing a good job so far. Incarnation gets used by Fnobbers, but he gets denied with a lockout. But it was just a mini Incarnation. Wants to sort of panic Wildcard Gaming in that situation. Fnobbers has his real Incarn coming up at around 15 seconds. That's really when they're going to need to make an offensive push, and I think it's likely they go after Looney once again. If Drainer and Fnobbers can push in, they can get on top of Looney, catch him in a stun. It could potentially be the Trinket from Looney and Barkskin, and it could maybe continue the pressure, but I think they've already committed their Maledicts in that last attempt, and unfortunately, they're not going to be able to have that available.
Mana still even, and that's not good for the Pumpers. Now having lost a blind pick and now potentially losing their counter pick, this new composition that Wildcard Gaming have crafted appears to be the perfect answer for their team. We may see Nerd Rage have to step back into the battle, but even then, the Windwalker Frostmage is supposed to be a good composition into Arms Warriors. It just seems to me that what I would have liked to seen from the Pumpers was a Windwalker Death Knight, but with Fnobbers healing. Fnobbers started the tournament series on the Chalky Milkman as the healer for that team, then switched over to the Pumpers and has been playing a lot of Balanced Druid. But I think his Resto Druid would be highly valuable in this particular series at this particular mark of it to try and counter-comp this Windwalker Frostmage composition. And I'm surprised that they haven't utilized him on that Restoration Druid yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we were expecting from the Pumpers, with Fnobbers getting on that roster. Would give them a lot more flexibility, but it seems like they're confident in Drainer healing them on the Mistweaver Monk. But normally when we see the Pumpers run the setup, they really focus on out-manning the other team. They really try to focus on drink denials. Fnobbers pushing in, landing Starfalls on the Looney. On these smaller maps makes it basically impossible for him to sit down and drink. But Pumpers, they've been playing so passive that Looney's been able to sneak away, get into cat form, and go for those drinks to regenerate his mana, and still in a really good spot as we just entered dampening. But now it seems like the Pumpers, they want to get aggressive. This is what I was saying. If Fnobbers and Drainer can push in, Looney is a vulnerable target. I think he's the most vulnerable target in this matchup, especially if Cervantes can get uptime. But Blizzo with a beautiful double leg sweep denies all of that momentum.
They still don't have a mana advantage. I don't think Drainer going the safe route is the best route in this case unless they can actually run Looney out of mana, but they're not even denting his mana bar with dampening having just kicked in. I think if Drainer was running Way of the Crane, that could be an added bonus of damage to kill Looney later in the game, or to even kill Morrow and overwhelm him. I mean, with a Death Knight on the Mage, it's really difficult to polymorph the Way of the Crane as long as they save their interrupts and stuns for Drainer to push forward and get aggressive. They catch Blizzo overextended. Instead of trying to go after him, just decide to crowd control him out of the fight and go after Morrow. Morrow sees it coming, activates Temporal Shield right before the stun, denying effectively all of that damage, healing himself back to full for free. Wildcard Gaming are just looking like a solid team. They're coming into this tournament 7-0 against Method Black in the previous rounds, and in this tournament here today, bringing in a new composition, showing that they can even diversify themselves further without the meta changing too significantly. Now looking like they've got a solid answer for every option that the Pumpers have available, and potentially going undefeated in another tournament, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, that would be very impressive to see from Wildcard Gaming, but like we kind of talked about, they've shown their hand towards a Method Black, and now Method Black has a potential answer for what they couldn't beat last week. So that's looking good for them. But Wildcard Gaming with Method Black, these seems to be the most prepared teams. They always have answers. If there's a composition that beats them the prior week, they're always prepared with something different, different strategy, different talents, different compositions. And that's really what makes them one of the most dominant teams in the entire world, and why we see them consistently do so well in these tournaments. A nice setup here from Maro and Blizzo onto Fnobbers and Cervantes, double leg sweep with the polymorph on Drainer, but Drainer was able to get that life cocoon out preemptively, keep Fnobbers alive. But Wildcard Gaming, they turn their attention over onto Cervantes. They're at 14% dampening, and although Cervantes is feeling relatively safe right now, if Looney can keep up this mana, Blizzo and Maro, I feel like, can definitely take down Cervantes. It could just be right here, right now. Once again, grapple weapon, huge plays from Blizzo. Offensive Cyclone by Looney, looking to deny Drainer any heals in this situation. Can he follow up the chain? Cervantes denies with a nice mind freeze, but Blizzo trinkets out. The pressure's not over yet. Cervantes trying to kite away. Finally, a huge heal connects there by Drainer, but Cervantes still on the ropes.
Yeah, Drainer locked down in crowd control for some time. How will he recover? Cervantes is the pillow. That Turbo Fist parries incoming attacks, including Death Strike. Cervantes is scared, hiding at the pillar. Drainer able to reconvene, now trying to get aggressive onto Blizzo and punish his aggressive place earlier on. But Blizzo sees it coming, predicts it, activates Touch of Karma right before being stunned. And that's the highest level of play, is then anticipating that you've overextended and having to make that predicted play, activating your defense before an incoming stun and denying a kill on yourself. So good awareness on Blizzo's part to realize he was overextending, but then immediately counterattacked it. Now Cervantes is on the back foot. We see diffuse magic force from Blizzo. He's actually still just running away, but with that Dark Iron Dwarf Racial, the Fire Blood, able to remove off multiple Glaire's Maledicts. So good defensive management on Blizzo's part, removing that offensive push. There's not really any openings now for the Pumpers. That was their incarnation. They got a lot of defense, but now they have to wait until Incarnation comes back up again to really do too much else. And without Drainer's Way of the Crane to add some extra kick to their team, I don't think they have enough damage to kill any target, at least not outside of Incarnation. And the higher that dampening gets up, the more vulnerable that Cervantes becomes.
Yeah, all of those statements are true. Cervantes and Fnobber is going to have to try to find some pressure here, but Cervantes, for one of the first times in this matchup, is forced very defensive. He's just going to be using this box to line of sight Blizzo a little bit, spamming up the chains of ice. Now turning his attention over on Amaro, looking for some damage, but Blizzo, he has the Touch of Death. That's going to make Cervantes very scared. If he can get the Touch of Death, and then after that burst hits, use the grapple weapon to deny any sort of Death Strike healing, Cervantes is going to be feeling very, very unhealthy. Drainer's going to have to use the Life Cocoon. And one thing I got to say, Drainer's been doing a great job managing some of the interrupts coming in from Wildcard Gaming. One of the things he consistently does is when he's in a situation where one of his teammates are low, he'll throw out the Life Cocoon, and that's when he opens up his tree, because if he gets interrupted, he has the Life Cocoon that's keeping his teammates alive, and then once the interrupt fades, he can top off his team. If he doesn't get interrupted, then their teammate's going to go to full HP anyways. Big setup coming in here from Wildcard Gaming.
That could just be the end of the match. Cervantes overextended to deny a drink, but now his team is completely vulnerable as multiple Glaire's Maledicts fly in and close the game out. Wildcard Gaming have crafted the perfect composition to defeat the options that the Pumpers have available, and now you're the Pumpers, you're on match point. What do you do?
We said that this was going to be a series where the blind pick was very important, but Wildcard Gaming actually going to prove us wrong. They're just going to show, we just figured it out. We know how to beat this team without too much of a problem.
Wildcard Gaming really stepped up this time, bringing in a new composition, bringing in new talents, specifically crafted, specifically tailored for this situation, and it's honestly great to see. It's the same thing that we saw from them last week when they just bring in a new composition against Method Black to finally take down that pesky Demon Hunter DK that has been giving them so much trouble throughout the Cups, and they're looking to do it again today. Wildcard Gaming are really just firing on all cylinders here at the end of this one as well. A beautiful chain of crowd control. They forced out a lot of defensive from Cervantes, stun into grapple weapon, then Drainer gets caught up in that DR polymorph, followed up by a CS counterspell onto Fnobbers, and then a full cyclone as well onto Drainer to close that one out. I mean, these guys are playing the composition well. They're beating the Pumpers on their own map pick as well, so this is looking really good for them for the rest of the series. And I gotta say, out of the two warriors here, Blizzo seems to be a little bit better on that warrior and a little bit better on that monk. Nerd Rage and Blizzo are going to be the two best warriors we have in Europe, really. It's always been about those two guys.
Very important to mention, and we have seen Blizzo kind of stepping out of that role quite a bit and multi-classing, so he's had even additional time to prove himself, but ultimately here, Wildcard Gaming, just like Zico said, not only are they looking fantastic here, this is something they were able to do last week. Let's see how far they can go. Last week, Wildcard Gaming shows up to the tournament. They're like, hey, we figured out a bunch of stuff. We're going to take down the team that currently is #1 in EU. Now they come to this tournament and they say, hey, we're going to destroy the Pumpers as well. What are we going to do? We figured out another new composition. And the thing is Wildcard Gaming is very quickly showing that they're not satisfied being completely comfortable going to LAN. They're not satisfied being the team with the second most points in EU. They are trying to go after all of the marbles. My name is Rich. I'm going to be your host. I'm joined by Zico, Super Tees, and Van Rookie. And Zico, as of right now, obviously there's still a lot more to see here, but do you think that Wildcard Gaming is starting to make that push to be the #1 team in EU?
They're definitely looking like it. They're constantly improving. They're constantly trying to adapt, but still, Method Black, you know, they have my heart. They've performed so well. Definitely have some questions for them, though, because they've been playing that Demon Hunter DK throughout the entire season, right? And now it's starting to come up, or other teams are starting to come up with some answers for that composition. Now, we know they have a lot of things to run, but we haven't really seen them being able to implement Waz that effectively yet in this season. I'm excited to see, are we going to see Waz on his Windwalker come in? Are we going to see maybe the LA Rogue like we saw from ABC? Are we going to see Waz get implemented more into that roster? Because I feel like if they really want to hold on to that top spot, that's the next step for them. And in this particular matchup here with Wildcard Gaming, we're gonna see the Pumpers lock in Blade's Edge. It's a small quarter. They can use those rings of pieces to their advantage, and also I feel like it's kind of hard as a Frost Mage to kite here, but I feel like bringing in Nerd Rage on the Warrior is more of a comfort thing than a compositional thing. I think the Windwalker is going to be a lot better for them in that regard. Nerd Rage is going to have a tough time against that Frost Mage, I feel like.
Yeah, but ultimately, you did mention last time some questions about what we saw with Nerd Rage on the Monk here. We're definitely not going to have any questions with this Warrior. This is somebody that we really do see perform time and time again in that conversation as one of the best Warriors in the entire world. Then what do you think about this slight tweak here from the Pumpers?
Well, I do like the map. They always seem to play it out well. Like we kind of talked about, it's difficult for the Frost Mage because there's not too many places on the map where you can kite the melee as well as move away from your healer, and that's what you consistently need to do. If you're always running on top of your Restoration Druid, that's when he becomes very susceptible to Nerd Rage, easily landing intimidating shouts, Cervantes being able to land Mind Freezes and asphyxiate stuns without really compromising his mobility and positioning, and it just becomes difficult. So for Wildcard Gaming, what we kind of need to see is we always need to see Looney sort of pulling away from Morrow and Morrow chasing behind him, and they just can kite circles around the map. Going up on the bridge is definitely not the place to be against a setup like what the Pumpers is bringing. So use the outside of the map, go up the ramp, down the ramp, and basically consistently do that. Exactly what you put.
I learned so much from you. Super Tees, how do you feel about this matchup in particular? I know we talked about the blind pick time and time again. We thought it was going to come down to the blind pick because not even just with this head-to-head matchup, right? That's a Pumpers thing. This is a team that has been really good about counter-comping quite a bit, and it's been crucial for them. Even though Wildcard Gaming, we know, is a team that can counter-comp as well, they can navigate out of situations a lot of the time. We see them maybe get stuck losing momentum, and they find a way to bring it back. The Pumpers have seemed to be more reliant on that blind pick. So now with this fulcrum shift in the series, where we see all momentum going this side of Wildcard Gaming, what do you think of the remainder of the series?
I mean, the Pumpers, they're going with this because it's comfort, because it's their best specializations. They perform the best at them. They're obviously saying, well, Nerd Rage looked too shaky in game number 1 on Windwalker. We don't trust him to go against Blizzo's Windwalker is basically what they're saying, even though the composition Wildcard Gaming have was built to deal with an Arms Warrior. So while Blade's Edge does set up good uptime, good choke points to try and prevent the Mage's escape, after this point, if they manage to pull this off, still, I would say, compositionally disadvantaged against Wildcard Gaming, they then have to face them on the largest maps in the pool, which means they probably can't lock in this same composition again. They're doing this to stay alive in the series, but then after this, they need a different answer. The composition that Wildcard Gaming has basically thrown a rock in the rock, paper, scissors between these two teams compositionally because it beats everything that the Pumpers have.
I'm not sure.
I know that
rock,
didn't
paper, shoot works. Yeah. We'll circle back to that. When we do look, though, I think that they have thrown a wrench in the
there
works.
You go.
Yeah, I think they have thrown a wrench in the works here, Zico. And Wildcard Gaming, we already started to talk about that. Man, I'm really stuck on that throwing a rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And that's exactly what they wanted when they are a team that revolves around that. But throwing a spanner in the works here definitely going to be a crucial thing that has changed up potentially the entirety of the bracket. Now, let's say the Pumpers actually do drop down. I want to look at this very quickly. If the Pumpers do drop down, they would be going up against ABC. So this starts to shape up a bunch of things very quickly if we do see that. And how do you think a matchup like that would play out then?
Well, I think ABC, they've shown that they have different compositions that they can run, including the Elemental Shaman Frost Mage is one answer, as well, potentially even bringing in the Windwalker Monk if they really need to. We know Nixie can play that, so they could. It seems like every team in the tournament can run this Windwalker Frost Mage Restoration Druid, and that might spell bad news for the Pumpers if they can't figure it out here against Wildcard Gaming. It's now shown basically the rest of these teams, oh look, this beats the Pumpers.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to note. I think there was a big expectation that we were going to see more and more teams maybe moving over to a lot of these Demon Hunter Cleaves, but it hasn't gone that way. We've actually seen a shift in a different direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The meta just keeps changing, and my biggest thing that I thought we were going to see is more Mistweavers, but some of these Restitutors have definitely been able to just keep going here. So far, we saw Chess and Method Black being able to play it every single game. We've seen, obviously, Change My Mind also play it every game. And now we see Wildcard Gaming playing that Resto Druid, Windwalker, and Mage. And they seem to be doing great against that Mistweaver. And this is what I like to see, though. Drainer is going to be bringing in that Way of the Crane here. Going to be able to dish out a lot of damage, provide a lot of healing as well when he's going for those big Rising Sun kicks later on in dampening. And I gotta say, now in the previous match, the Windwalker was the kill target for Wildcard Gaming. They wanted to kill Nerd Rage on that Windwalker, and now they are going to be going after Nerd Rage once again. Actually, in the first game they went after Nerd Rage. In the second game they went after Cervantes. But now the target is going to switch back over to Nerd Rage here on that Warrior. And we are going to see Maru use that map, the bottom side of the map, and try to use big circles here to survive.
This was the composition we saw the Pumpers win the European Cup #3 with. Definitely a powerful force, but the thing is, after talking to Valet, he said that this team is too predictable. Teams are going to figure them out, and then once they're figured out, they're no longer a threat. So it's up to the Pumpers now to evolve and adapt if they want to find victory.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most important things to note. I mean, when you look at every single player and what they have brought here on the side of the Pumpers, this is the most Pumpers comp that you could expect. This is exactly what you want to see all of these players doing, but the downside is going to be that is predictable. This comp is definitely all pump, but the thing is Wildcard Gaming going to be able to deal with that in this game and take this series 3-0?
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. Looney doesn't have a trinket right now, so potentially we've seen the Pumpers before swap to the Restoration Druid and get significant damage out. Have to see if they can get that done. Leg sweep now on a Cervantes and Nerd Rage. Big damage coming in from Morrow and Blizzo. Nicely done. Drainer responds with his Revival. That 3-minute cooldown is going to be a huge area of effect heal. Heals up everyone on the map. And it looks like that will stabilize Cervantes and Nerd Rage for the time being. I still like the build that Morrow's running. It's the same one we saw in game #1 where he has the extra Frost Nova, relying on the Cone of Cold damage with that Burst of Cold PvP talent. And I think with the way Blizzo has been supporting Morrow with Tiger's Lust, with Ring of Peace, I think it's going to be really difficult for the Pumpers to actually take Morrow down.
All right, pressure on Nerd Rage. 2 members low on health. Wildcard Gaming looking solid on this new composition that they've brought to the European Cup #5. Despite not many changes to the game, the meta has shifted significantly. This composition appears to have completely nullified the Pumpers and taken away any opportunity they have with the compositions they've got prepared. Let's see if they can, though, with their main bread and butter. They've got a decent chance here, having forced the first ice block from Morrow off the back of Cervantes. Dark Simulacrum steals on those polymorph spells. Morrow's going to have to be more careful with that moving forward. Potentially his life here if they're able to connect. Blizzo, once again with good defense, denies the kill.
That is not the spot you want to be for Morrow. Like we talked about, when you're on that bridge, you don't have many options as far as kiting. So Morrow realizing he's in a bit of trouble, he jumps off once again. Now on this lower side of the map, he has a lot more room where he can move around, try to avoid some of the incoming damage from Cervantes and Nerd Rage, because if you have a Warrior on you, you have an Unholy Death Knight on you for too long. As a Frost Mage, you're inevitably going to fall. Blizzo now getting swapped too, but Touch of Death is rolling onto Nerd Rage. Do they have the damage? One Maledict does connect. Drainer denies with the Life Cocoon, and Drainer, he's actually not playing Way of the Crane in this matchup, so he's opting to just sit back, keep his team healthy, keep them alive, and eventually maybe secure a mana lead. It seems like it's more difficult for Looney to actually sneak away, get out of combat, and regenerate mana through drinking. So that's definitely a win condition here for the Pumpers as long as they deny the heals from Looney.
I do think it was a smart decision by the Pumpers to go to Blade's Edge Arena. Not a lot of teams utilize this map, but it's definitely allowing them to overcome the Frost Mage disadvantage. Although in this position, maybe Nerd Rage just gets destroyed. Multiple defensives pulled here. Will he be able to stay alive is now the question. Trainer getting interrupted twice in a row, really putting himself behind. No cooldowns for 10 seconds. Looney keeps the chain going, 9 more seconds. Do they have enough damage to push them over? It doesn't look like they've got enough in this position. Mana evening out slightly, but at least the Pumpers still ahead. They've got that one advantage. Outside of that, it's really not looking too good. Even though they've got the Blades Edge Arena map pick, Morrow is now playing the map effectively at the bottom of the stairs, going back and forth, so there's a lot more open space. If he was playing on the top of the bridge, he wouldn't be able to escape as easily in Kite, so Morrow's definitely adapting to his location a lot better, I would say, overall than a lot of mages we've seen in the past. And as long as he's able to maintain this kiting and this positioning along the bottom stairs, I think they're looking good to set up victory here and just 3-0 the Pumpers.
Yeah, and during the meantime, Looney was able to escape, regenerate all of his mana, so Wildcard Gaming, they're going to be feeling very healthy. Shortly, we will be moving forward into dampening. Bash now onto Drainer. Nerd Rage Heroic leaps onto the top side of the bridge as he realizes he's vulnerable. He needs to try to avoid some damage. Blizzo with Touch of Death in 5 seconds. There's a huge offensive push available for Wildcard Gaming. Pumpers are going to have to find an answer to respond. Drainer Life Cocoon in 20 seconds. That's the answer that they need. Cervantes still a little bit low. I don't know where Blizzo is right now. I think he's just trying to split damage over onto Nerd Rage. Now, finally, Nerd Rage reconnecting onto Morrow. Good pressure here from the Pumpers. Morrow's looking to deny with the Temporal Shield. And that the way things are playing out, Wildcard Gaming, most of the pressure has been on their side. There was a mana lead for the Pumpers, but unfortunately they lost that by allowing Looney to sneak away and drink.
Looney in crowd control. This is an opportunity for the Pumpers to get the second ice block. No coordinated assault. Nerd Rage keeps the chain going. Ring of Peace punts Morrow back into the fight. This is where I would have liked to have seen Drainer running that Way of the Crane. He hasn't run it the entire series. He wants to win on mana, but they're not winning on mana any of these games. So I think the Way of the Crane may be necessary for them to have enough damage potential to force these ice blocks and likely get a kill against the team of Wildcard Gaming. I think in this one case, playing safe is not going to be enough. Cervantes falling further behind and dampening stacks up. It becomes more and more difficult for him, especially with that grapple weapon strategy currently activated on Cervantes, denying some death strikes. Maledicts fly in to soak up Drainer's healing. Pressure is good. One death strike saves Cervantes for now. Another one stabilizes, but now his healer's locked in a polymorph, and he's basically out of runic power. He's trying to kite Blizzo. Blizzo reconnects with the Tiger's Lust. Morrow, though, not in a position to dish out any damage. Turbo Fist gets stunned. Cervantes with good evasive maneuvers.
Yep. Excellently done by Cervantes, now moving his way up on top of the bridge once again, but still not feeling too healthy. Drainer hasn't had an opportunity to top him off. All 3 members of the Pumpers in full retreat at this point. Drainer actually, he's using the Tiger's Lust, which I like that, so that's a good talent choice for him. Instead of the typical Chi Torpedo we see from the Mistweaver Monks, he's going to be opting into the Tiger's Lust, which is going to be an extra break for Cervantes and Nerd Rage to get out of roots, as well as gives them a sprint. So increasing their uptime on Morrow just a little bit. The Pumpers definitely know what they're doing. We like to call them the cleave of these, or the king of these cleave setups, but they may have met their match here against Wildcard Gaming, who seem to have the perfect composition into them.
I think not only having the perfect composition, but also having the practice on it. I would have said the disadvantage for Wildcard Gaming is Looney running on mana, but he's more than prepared to go head-to-head with Mistweavers now, it looks. We saw him in Poike running the Rogue Mage, which was similar, but his mana was abysmal in comparison, so Looney's definitely ahead of the curve, I think, in adapting to this new meta. And even on Blades Edge Arena, where I would have considered them disadvantaged, they're starting to find victory. We see that the team of the Pumpers have repositioned. They're playing at the bottom center pillars, and this is to bait Morrow from that open space. He doesn't want to go back behind the pillar, so he's a little bit reluctant moving forward and then trying to catch Cervantes with the Frozen Orb, dish out some damage. Morrow moves into that pillar. He compromises his positioning. He stacks up on Blizzo. They then get double stunned. Drainer can use the pillar and those ramps to line of sight polymorph. So playing under that bridge is a trap that the Pumpers are laying for Morrow. And it's a matter if Morrow can navigate in, get damage out without falling to prey to that trap.
Yeah, it seems like so far he's not falling for it. He's sitting back, just dropping the Blizzard, dropping the Frozen Orb. But now Cervantes and Nerd Rage, they move forward, trying to get some damage. Ring of Peace denies a lot of that pressure as Morrow's looking to stay alive. Gets interrupted. Looney needs to find some heals. Temporal Shield will keep Morrow stable. Frozen Orb gets dropped out once again. And I gotta say, I really like this build from Morrow. We've seen a lot of Frost Mages struggling to get out pressure in these type of situations where they're being trained down by double melee, criticizing a lot of them for still running the Frostbolt build, which just seems completely worthless. Morrow making some beautiful adaptations has been allowing him to not only kite better, but also get out additional pressure, which I think is a big reason why Wildcard Gaming has been looking so good.
I'd say there's a mistake made there, a pretty big one by Wildcard Gaming. Both Blizzo and Morrow were leg sweeped. Blizzo pre-grapple weapons the Warrior Nerd Rage, so he couldn't attack. But they both use Gliders Medallion to get out of the leg sweep. So now if they get double stunned again, they can't get out of it, that could be at least a touch of karma. Maybe a kill on Blizzo, I think, is the main thing for the Pumpers. They should keep attacking Morrow, think that he's the main target, and then switch to Blizzo in the next leg sweep. I think if they can do that, they're going to 100-0 Blizzo. But they need to make it to that point, and right now they're under fire. Tons of damage from Morrow onto 2 targets as Drainer has to make a choice of who he life cocoons. Tossing it on a Nerd Rage, anti-magic shield enough for Cervantes. Good defensive mitigation by the team of the Pumpers. But still, Drainer running that safe build. No Way of the Crane is actually behind on mana, even playing it safe. And I think that may end up costing the series if they even had a chance against this composition. I would have liked to at least seen an attempt at it. We haven't seen it once in any of these potentially 3 and final games that we'll see between these teams in the Cup number 5. Of course, you can never count Cervantes and Nerd Rage out. They have more than a ton of experience together in tournament settings, so even at a disadvantage, they're still a threat.
Yeah, Looney once again snuck away, got a drink. Mar using Icy Veins to deny the kill, get out additional pressure. Beautiful Cyclone on the Drainer. Wildcard Gaming could close this out. Touch of Death rolling for Blizzo. Who's it on? Nerd Rage denies it. With the die by the sword. There's it once again. A nice grapple weapon coming in from Blizzo as they continue the pressure on the Nerd Rage. Bash over on the Drainer. Is there any follow-up? Amaro getting low. Definitely doesn't want to throw away the game. Wildcard Gaming has set this up beautifully. Morrow getting really low there. What a scary situation. Luckily still has a cold snap. Second ice block available. Wildcard Gaming now feeling healthy, but Drainer in the meantime managed to top off all 3 members of the Pumpers.
Yeah, but at the cost of Die by the Sword and Icebound Fortitude, which are major defensive cooldowns for these classes to even stay alive. And now with dampening at that 40% mark, Cervantes can't just rely on Death Strike to be able to survive these incoming attacks. There's still 1 ice block. There's still half mana left in the tank for Looney. Wildcard Gaming have set themselves up well to 3-0 the Pumpers. Cervantes trying to push forward and dish out tons of damage. Blizzo there to peel potentially. Fists of Fury preemptive on the leg sweep, parrying that incoming stun. Good move by Blizzo, anticipating Drainer's movement, avoiding crowd control, and now building even more momentum for his team.
Yeah, definitely good pressure here from the Pumpers. Morrow could be in trouble. No trinket. Might be the second ice block forced out. He's got no mana. Ironbark looking to deny. Looney trying to keep him alive, doing everything he can, but Morrow dipping into execute range. That is not the spot you want to be in with Nerd Rage all over you. Morrow getting lower. Looney gets interrupted. What is Morrow going to do? Cervantes and Nerd Rage, though, in the meantime, they've expended a lot of their hit points chasing down Morrow in this matchup. Morrow has 1 ice block available. Temporal Shield looking to deny so far, but Cervantes and Nerd Rage still all over him. And Morrow is dancing with death. Finally, into that second ice block, Looney finds the heal. Cervantes actually stole the ice block, and that will keep him alive.
The Gladiator's Maledict.
Sick plays.
If that ends up winning the game because he ice blocked an incoming Gladiator's Maledict, it's going to be absolutely sick. I don't know if it's going to be. Everybody is dead. Drainer's working with nothing. He keeps them going a tad bit longer. How much longer can they go? It's match point in the upper bracket, but Nerd Rage will fall. Despite some sick plays by Cervantes, Wildcard Gaming have crafted the perfect answer for their entire team.
Let's see if Wildcard Gaming can keep on doing this as well. If we see them